Hello, my name is Doug Leasure, and I wanted to do something today that ought to be fun for some of you, and that is to look at using Excel for data analysis of the Sage 500, formerly known as Mass 500 General Ledger. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So I am actually running Sage 500 right now, and what I want to do is to pull some of the historical data, the actuals and balance information or budget information into Excel, so we can do some slicing and dicing and analyzing the data that way. So in Sage 500, looking at the general ledger maintenance, there's some information that we need to understand before we can actually start to grab the data. So if we start with looking at the account information, you see that the account number has 4 segments to it. The first one is the Natrl, and then there's 3 other segments. And looking at 4100, this is the revenue for hardware, and we can see that it's part of a particular account group, an account type. And so these are some of the things we will need to understand as we try to pull the data and then do some analysis on it. So looking at first of all, the main or the Natrl account, the first segment. What we can see there is that if we look at the maintain Natrl accounts screen, we can see that the Natrl account is where we describe the account group and the account type for that main account. The account groups again are broken into account category and account type. And since the account number has 4 segments, one of the things we care about is identifying what the other segments are, segments 2, 3, 4. So if we look here in the maintain account segments, we can see that the second segment is division, the third one department, and the fourth one is region. Okay, so that's what I wanted to look at inside of the general ledger. Let's go ahead and just close down the general ledger. Okay, so before we go into Excel and try to pull the data into here, I need to kind of walk through a little bit of what the database looks like, the tables within the database. And this would be what's normally referred to as the app database. Mass 500, Sage 500 app database is what most people would refer to it. That's the database that contains all of the Sage 500 data. So to me, the easiest way to look at it is kind of do it visually, and the best tool to use in doing that would be the SQL Management Studio, since Sage 500 runs under SQL as its database engine. Okay, so I have launched SQL Management Studio, and in my case, the app database is named Sage 500 _ app, and that's the one we want to query. So we can just right-click on it and say New Query, and that allows us to select some data out of it. So let's take a quick look at where we want to start. So if we start with TGL account hist, that would contain the history of the account balances. And if we select that, you can see very quickly there's not a lot of data there, but it does contain the fiscal year, the fiscal period, the GL account key. Now that's not the account number, but an identifier or a key that points to the true account number. In addition, it has the credit and debit amounts. Okay, so that's interesting, but for us, the purposes we're wanting to use it, it's really important that we understand what the account number is, because that's the number that we would know and identify with. So in order to do that, we have to look at a couple more tables to really get the full set of information. So let me just grab some more of these. Okay, so we looked at account hist. It has the credit and debit. Now we can do simple math to create the balance, the net change amount. So that won't be a big deal for us to get the net change amount. But we need the true account number. So we can pick that up by looking in the TGL account table. And in there we see those same account keys. It has the company identifier, the account description. That's a really important thing. The GL account number. Notice how it's not formatted, meaning there's no segment delimiters, the dashes or the dots, but it is the account number there. So that's pretty important. If we do want to find out more information about it, like the category, the type, whether it's normally a debit or a credit type of an account, all those kinds of things, we need to dig deeper. So the next thing we'll look at will be the Natrl account. So that's the first segment, and more detailed information about the Natrl segment, and that's where we find out what group it's part of, what the type is, and those kinds of things. So we have to look in there as well, or connect to that one. And then from there we can look at the account group. That'll give us the grouping identifiers, revenue, expenses, fixed assets, liabilities, that kind of stuff. And then finally, one more we have to hit to get the full picture, which is the account category. And from here we can figure out which things are normally a debit or a credit type of account. All right, so that's the raw information we need. And as you noticed, Sage 500 does a really good job of putting things into their own small databases, which does mean then we have to link everything back together to get the full set of information that we care about. So if we look at these tables, we can actually join them all together. So we'll just start with the select everything from the hist table, the account table, Natrl account, account group, and account category. And when we do that, we get all of the tables, information from all the tables, but all joined together according to the account number. Okay, this is everything we need, but actually it's more than we really care about. It's too much data to be used practically. So the next step we'll do is go ahead and just identify the specific fields that we care about. So I've already done that here, so let me go ahead and grab that. And so we're just, rather than grabbing everything, we're going to grab specific columns or fields from that entire collection of data. So now we have a very, I think, reasonable set of data. The company identifier, fiscal year, fiscal period, the account number, the description, the amount. Now the amount, we just did that simply as some simple math. Debit amount minus credit amount, and just called that field amount. So that was very helpful to get that as a net change. Then the next piece of it is just simply getting the account group, and based on the account category, determining whether or not it's normally a debit or credit type of an account. So you can see how we have credits and debits in there. The other thing that's kind of helpful is to actually take the account number and break it up. First of all, is display it in a formatted account, so we have dashes in there to use between the different segments, and then also displaying the individual segments and giving it a name that is meaningful based on what we saw when we looked at the general ledger. The first segment is the Natrl account, then the division, department, and region. So we can actually, using the substring, we can actually pick off the first 4 digits, the next 2 digits, the next 2 digits, and the final 2 digits, and display that with a reasonable field name. And that'll really help us as we're wanting to later slice and dice our information in Excel. Okay, now depending on how much data you have, how many companies you have, how many years you've been using the general ledger, you might end up with too much information. So please be aware that you will probably want to limit your data using the where clause. It could be as simple as looking at a specific company, or maybe a specific company in a specific year, depending on how much data you need. But for us, we'll go ahead and we'll at least limit it to the SOA state of arts demo data. So we'll limit it to just that company. All right, so that'll reduce the data that we're seeing by a little bit and make it a little easier as we pull it into Excel and start to analyze it there. All right, you may want to just simply stop here and take this query over to Excel and work with that. But before we do, I just wanted to mention, I know some people that I work with, they want to see not only the historical actuals, but also the budget data. So let's take a look at the budget data real quick, and couple select statements here we'll use to do that. So if we look at just the table called TGL budget, very simple table, fiscal year, period. It also has the GL key now, so that means we're going to have to link to all those other tables to find out all the information about the true account number, the type, the category, those kinds of things. So we'll have to link to all those other tables, just like we did for the history table. But there's one more piece to the budget, and that is, since we can have as multiple budgets, as many as you want, in Sage 500, we do have to look at one more table called the budget type table. And in there we have just simply a list of those budget codes that you've created in 500. So our multiple budgets. So in order to get that data, we do need to link budget to budget type, and then to all those other tables we did for the history. So showing you real quick, we can just pull all that together and get the company, year, period, GL account number, description, the amount, or the budget amount in this case, and the budget code, or the budget ID. And then linking to the same tables, we get all the other things, group, type, formatted account, etc. So, okay, now final thing I want to show you is we can actually, with just a little bit of manipulation, we can actually combine both actuals and budgets together in one complete set, which makes it very useful when you're wanting to look at both budgets and actuals and start to pivot that out of an Excel pivot table. So it's actually helpful to have both sets of data returned in one place. So let's go ahead and do that. Basically, there's one more field here in the budget that we didn't have in actuals, and that is the budget type. So it's actually referring to all of the different budget codes that we've created. Okay, so I think what would make sense is if we just add this field to our actuals, and we'll go ahead and put the word actual in there instead of the budget code from the budget tables. That'll give us a way to identify which values are coming from the actuals and which are coming from the other budget codes. So that's pretty simple for us to do. So I've actually done that here by just simply adding the word actual as the budget type ID. And then we can use a simple SQL command union all to actually combine the two pieces of data. So So we're going to take this whole thing, and that's what we will use then for our combined set of budgets and actuals. Okay. There's all of our actuals, and then we start into our budgets. Okay, so this is the data we want. Now, I know this is kind of long and geeky, so the good news is I'm going to go ahead and leave a copy of this entire select statement in the comments for this video, so you can just copy it and paste it out of there and use it for your own purposes in your own environment. The biggest thing to know if you do that is you will want to in the places where we're referencing the various tables, notice I am appending, or actually prefixing, my particular database name in front of each of these tables. So you'll have to adjust those appropriately for your database name. The other small detail would be I have 4 segments in this demo data, and they are the Natrl, division, department, and region. So you'll probably end up needing to adjust these substring commands to match your number of characters in your segments and the number of segments and what you have named your segments. So just a little bit of a simple manipulation, you can use this query. Okay, now comes the fun part. Let's go ahead and take this whole query and take it over to Excel. All right, let's look at connecting Excel then to our Sage 500 data, pulling the information in here so we can then do some analysis. Okay, so within Excel we start with the data ribbon, and from there we want to make a connection to our data source. So it starts with access from the web, from text, from other sources, and under other sources the very first one we care about is the option to get the data from SQL Server. So the first thing it wants to know is the name of our SQL Server. So you'll need to put in your SQL Server name appropriately. And then how are we going to log on? What credentials are we going to use to get permission? So ideally your database person has set you up to use your Windows login as the way to authenticate or log into your SQL Server. So he should ideally have set you up and given you read access to your Sage 500 data. The other choice, if he didn't do that, was for him to create a SQL account that has read-only permission to the Sage 500 data and given you that name and password. So again, ideally you're set up so you can use your Windows authentication. Okay, let's go next. And we're actually, at this point, we've already made the connection to the SQL Server, and now it's giving us a list of all of the databases that we have permission to look at. And again, our Sage 500 app, that's where we have our Sage 500 data. So when we select it, it looks inside of it and gives us a list of all of the tables listed there, tables and views. All right, so what we care about would be the TGL data. And so just to get us started, I'm going to go ahead and go down here and select any one of the TGL tables to get started. I'll go next. And then by default, it wants to create a name and a description of what we're connecting to. So I guess I'm going to suggest we use something a little more brief and generic, and that would be Sage 500. And then let's just do it this way, Sage 500, and then the database that we're hitting, Sage 500 app. We use the same thing for the friendly name. And we'll go ahead and click Finish. Now before we say OK to actually place it on the sheet in cell A1, we want to go back and modify it slightly. So please click on the Properties, and then the definition. Okay, so it's in here that we can tell it what we're doing. So rather than querying the entire table, what we want to do is switch this to what's called a SQL Query. We'll get rid of this. So here's where we want to use that entire query that we created to pull the data from the actuals and the budgets and combine them together. So we're going to paste that right here in what it calls the command text. All right, let's just make sure we get the copy paste to work correctly. Just one second. Okay, much better. All right, so that is our select statement. And again, our command type is SQL, a SQL query, and this is a specific query. Now when we say OK, it gives us a little information, a little pop-up dialog box. We just say yes here. And now we say OK, and it's going to put it on existing worksheet cell A1. Okay, and just that fast, it has queried the data in our SQL Server, in our Sage 500 database, and returned all of this information for us. Company, fiscal year, fiscal period, GL account number, description, the amount, whether it's actual or budget, the account group, whether it's normally a debit or credit type, and then a formatted account, the Natrl division department. So we have those for identifying our data whenever we want to pivot it. Okay, so real quick, couple things we can do here. One of the things I like to do is just simply using the filtering. It makes it very easy to start slicing and dicing the data just using simple filtering. So if we care about a particular fiscal year, let's say 2007, we can easily select all of that data. If we care about perhaps the actuals only, we can select the actuals. If we care about, if we want to look at just the revenue data, then we can use our filter for our account group and get just the revenue data. So that's a very quick and easy way to start to slice and dice the data. Okay, and so go ahead and use filtering as your first level of analysis. Second thing though, and this is where it gets to be, I think, a lot more fun, is when you create a pivot table out of all of this same data. So if we go back here and select anywhere on the table, we can now do an insert of a pivot table. We'll say OK. Creates it as sheet 4 because we already had sheets 1, 2, 3 there. So let's go ahead and just move it to the end. And now we have a pivot table. So what are the values? Well, the values are in the amount column. What do we care about for the columns? Probably the fiscal periods would make the most sense. So let's drop that down there. The rows would probably be our account numbers. And I think the better thing to use rather than the account number would be the formatted account. It's a lot more recognizable when you have the segment delimiters in there. Okay, and as far as slicing our data, we probably would want to filter it by, if you brought in all the companies, then we definitely want to use company ID. In our case, we limit it to just one company, so we'll start with the fiscal year and maybe the budget type and group. And if you wanted to go and break it down further, your division, department, region, all that kind of stuff would make sense to do. But there we go. We now have a pivot table, and it's very easy for us to start pivoting this, looking at just the actual data. If you wanted to see everything, if you wanted to see the revenue only, very easy to start slicing, dicing this in the pivot table and doing some analysis that way. All right. The other thing you'll notice, if we take the account group, we can also throw it down here in the rows, and now we see all of our groups of data. So the COGS first, current assets, assets, operating expenses, and revenue, and then all of the accounts within that. So again, just normal stuff that you're probably used to doing with pivot tables, but I wanted to give you kind of a feel for how easy it is to get this data, to slice it and dice it in Excel, using initially the filtering, and then secondarily using pivot tables. Now, if your data changes, as you would expect it would, just remember that you need to come back here to the Data ribbon, okay, and then do the Refresh All, and that will refresh the data in the data that we've pulled. So this table, which is the data from the database, is refreshed using the Data Refresh All. I'm not sure why Excel does this, but for the pivot table itself, you need to right-click and do a refresh, or coming here to our pivot table tools options tab, do the refresh all here. So it does require 2 refreshes. One to get a new set of data from the SQL database, but a second refresh to refresh all of your pivot tables. Okay, well, that's all I wanted to cover, so thank you very much.